No matter what we do in life, whether it be preaching, singing, business, whatever it is, we've got to first establish a direction and a basic philosophy in what we're doing. And I had to approach this a long time ago and make a decision in my mind what direction I'm going music-wise. And if you look on page M5, we refer to the statement of philosophy that I have there. The first paragraph you may read at a later time. Because of lack of time, we'll skip that and go to the second paragraph, the first sentence. Sacred music must be a means to a spiritual end. As long as I can keep before me the fact that sacred music and the music that I am using is just that. It's something to use as a tool to try to open the hearts of people and plant the gospel. It's not music for music's sake. If I were interested in music for music's sake, I would get out of the ministry. I would not be in a church. I am here because God has called me to use music to try to present a witness in the message of Christ through that music. And it's my tool. It is my tool to be used to that spiritual end. And we can't get the cart before the horse, or we've lost the whole depth of meaning. The same thing is true with the pastor when he stands to preach. There's a part of ego that is involved here, you know. When you get to preaching sometimes, or preparing, we can get carried away, possibly. I know none of you would do this, but some could. And the oratory, the sonorous tones, the phrasing, or the homiletical approach to the sermon. Oh, isn't that a great look? I've got 1, 2, 3, and lose sight, possibly, of why. What am I really seeking to do in this all? It's got to all, it's not that we ought not plan that way, but we're to have that consciousness in our minds. Well, we're doing this, but it's with that purpose. And when it comes down to the little end of the funnel, it better point toward and concentrate on that one thing of trying to bring people to Christ and to help us, others to grow in His grace and knowledge. And as long as we keep that in mind, and keep what we do and what we use, these tools, whether it be speaking or singing, as means toward a spiritual end, then I think we're level-headed, and I think God can take it and use it. That's been my experience. I have amplified that in the rest of that paragraph, and you may read that at a more convenient time. It just explains the goals that I have established for us here in our music ministry. And there are 4 basic objectives we've established here. One is worship, as ministry of music pertains itself to the local church program. It's worship, evangelistic and missionary outreach through music, Christian education, and music education. And worship, when you think of the worship service, you think of 3 main areas that are involved musically in a worship service. You have instrumental, you have your solos, your specials, your ensemble groups, your choir specials. Then you have congregational singing. I would like to speak briefly on congregational singing, because I think this is an area that we have neglected for so long that we really need to think very seriously about. I think probably the devil has blinded our eyes to the possibilities that we have in this area. You know, we stand to sing on Sunday morning, "All hail the power of Jesus' name. Let even the angels prostrate fall before Him." And we look around and we see people gawking at the ceiling and yawning, appearing disinterested, bored. I wonder what that man who comes in off the street thinks, who's been told, "Listen, you need to go down to that First Baptist church." Those people and I have had experience with the Lord. Christ makes a difference in it. They have abounding joy, the abundant life. He makes the difference. And this, your life is sadly lacking. And you can find the answer to your every need in the Lord, as these people have. And He wanders in their church and takes a seat in a cluster of these people. And we stand to sing the great hymns of the faith that speak of Christ's redemption for us, crowning with many crowns, a Lamb upon His throne, and our exultant praise to Him. And He observes, and those people sit bored, disinterested, lifeless, unmoved. I wonder what He thinks. I think I know what I would think. I think I would say, this is not for me. If these people profess to be the product of the Christianity that I've been told about, I want no part of it. It hasn't done a thing for them. They're not enthusiastic nor impressed with what Christ has tried to do in their lives. We have overlooked, we talk about witnessing all the time, spreading the gospel, sharing our testimony, yet we come to a strategic time like our worship service when all the effort of the past week in visiting and witnessing and praying has poured and concentrated itself into that 1 hour service. Why not carefully take everything we do in that service and hone it down and point it toward that evangelistic thrust, or bringing about that decision in that service? Now, we are cheating the people, first of all, because they are missing the exhilarating experience of standing together in corporate praise to God. Secondly, we are cheating that person that comes by displaying a false impression of what God really does do in a life. We are missing the opportunity for a tremendous corporate witness at that time when we stand to sing. It'll do something to you. You've been in situations like that, and I have, and I'll never forget them. Why not? Sunday may be the last Sunday we'll have a chance to praise Him. How do we know? Why not? I'll tell you why. It is an expression, it's a spiritual problem. God has told us He puts a song in the heart. We cannot express with our lips what we don't have in our heart. And if it isn't there, no wonder they sit there dead. I think congregational singing is a spiritual barometer to a church. You show me a church where there's dead congregational singing, I'll show you a dead church. Show me a church where there's a live, vibrant congregational singing, I'll show you a live church. It's a spiritual barometer of the people. I never will forget being in Belfast, Ireland, with a group of Irish Baptist pastors one time. They stood to sing, no hymn books. They burst into song, the Savior's name. I never heard it before. There is a name I love to hear. I love to sing its worth. It sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest name on earth. Oh, how I love the Savior's name. And this blessed me, just to hear them sing. But you know what I got the greatest blessing out of? Watching them. I looked at those men, and as they stood to sing, the expression and the countenance on their faces, it gave me the impression that God had filled them to here, and they were overflowing. And if they didn't express it somewhere, they were going to burst wide open. Now, that's the way we ought to be. We ought to be so full of what God has done for us, what He's accomplished in our lives, what He's given to us. My soul, if there's an overflow, why beg people to praise Him? Huh? We ought to do it because we love Him, because of what He's accomplished for us. That exultant praise from the overflow of that Christian experience. That's the secret to it. There are a couple other mundane things we can do to improve it, but that's basically a spiritual problem. And people need to live in that glow of that first experience with Him. And that experience needs to be magnified every time they meet together. Now, when we can do things with the choir, with the instruments. Tommy can take that organ and can play it on congregational hymns, and he does a great job. And we play words instead of notes. And we read into the message of that thing. Every time we move to our last hymn, maybe adding in a half a step modulation, shooting that last stanza up, and doing everything we can to make that singing exhilarating and encouraging people to join in. You can do things like this. You can, as I've asked the choir to sing the first and last stanzas of every hymn in unison on the melody line, which is an encouragement to the congregation to join in. We're trying to encourage the people to sing the melody, you see, to sing out. They're not interested in harmony. They want you to hear that melody line, that thrust of that tone coming out on the melody. We can do things like this. I can try to direct the words. I change tempos purposely at times, just to make people stop and think, what are we singing? And I'm guilty of this. We have sung some of the old hymns, and they're great, but we've sung them so much sometimes, it's almost like putting a nickel in a Nickelodeon, and it's automatic, Here's Amazing Grace, and there's Glory to His Name, and you select the buttons. And I wonder if you were really honest with ourselves, how many times we've really stopped to think about these words that I'm actually singing. We've done it so much, it's easy to let it to be almost second nature, and we miss the fresh new experience of singing those words and letting them take their impact each time. So I'll change tempo sometime in a service and do other things to call attention to the words and what we're doing, to make us realize what's going on. We'll break off the instruments, sing a cappella, anything to make them realize the message that we're trying to put over. Then the other thing about congregational singing, 3 things. The third thing is this. I had the privilege of being in England several times, but in 1958, I believe it was, visiting and crusades in our Baptist churches over there. And I sat there, and, you know, they sing. Congregational singing. The choirs aren't as good as ours, but the congregational singing is tremendous. Those people, I did not see one person not participating in the singing in any of the churches I visited. And I looked. Not one person. And I sat and I wondered about that. I said, now, why is that? Why do they sing better than our folks? Is it because the pastors over there have a better quality of preaching and have brought about a deeper dedication and appreciation of the lives of these people for God? What is it? I don't think so. I think we have just as fine preaching. I think the level of dedication of our people is just as fine. But what is the reason for it? I got to looking. There was no carpet on the floor. There was no acoustical tile on the ceiling. There were no drapes on the walls. There weren't even pew cushions in the pews. They couldn't afford them. So consequently, you had a beautiful wooden building, wooden floor, or stone floor. And when old Joe stood up out in the congregation to sing, it sounded like he was at home in the shower or the bathtub. And man, it encouraged him. And he wanted to join in greater on the next stanza. He sounded good to himself. Now, we overlook this. So many of our churches are like funeral parlors. They are. You walk into them, and there's wall-to-wall carpet that thick. There's acoustical treatment on the ceiling. There's a speaker system way up there that funnels the sound out through a little tin cup over a guy's head out in the congregation. And we walk in. It even is sleep-inducive, by the way. We walk in quietly. Everything's like a funeral. We sit through the service, and we whisper through it, and we leave in the whisper, too. I think sometimes, in my own mind, that Satan himself invented carpet and draperies and acoustical tile. And I believe he has really very subtly used that to destroy the participation we as Baptists have enjoyed in our worship service. You see, that's the very genius of our Baptist faith. Participation. We're a democracy. We vote on everything. We encourage participation of the people. We're not a faith that has a person stand before in liturgical robes and do everything for us, and we sit and then we leave and forget it. But we are people who have always joined in and participated. And anything we can do to embrace that and to help it will help our churches. And when we start the other way, it's going to start down. It's going to start down. Acoustics in the church. We're trying to do something out here, and we've improved it already, and we're continuing to work. We put marble on that where the preacher stands and on the lower Lord's Supper level. We have taken, a lady wanted to give carpet wall to wall out there in that sanctuary. Thank goodness the Lord helped us through that. And we just put it down the aisles. Now, admittedly, it's beautiful. It's nice. It's like your living room. You can take off your shoes and relax and go to sleep. But that's not why we come to church. We come to church to praise God and to serve Him. And let me tell you as a preacher something not to overlook. When you stand to preach, your communication and response has to be with that person out there. And you cannot beat the communication situation we have right here in this room now. Me speaking directly to you, and you hearing the voice as it comes from here, as opposed to sitting in a congregation with a sea of carpet in front of you, and to have a microphone situation up there with that little tube we talked about a minute ago, piped out to the guy sitting in the back. He has almost a detached feeling as he sits there. He can almost separate himself with a wall from you because what he hears piped out of this little tube, this canned sound that's coming. Anything we can do where he feels like that sound is coming right from the preacher and he's getting that, he's speaking right down his throat, we're ahead. And you'll see a difference in the response of your people. We have tried that here, and we're still working on it. There are things just acoustically here that we can do in our sanctuaries, and I pray God that we'll smarten up at this point. There are architects in the city, in our city and all over this nation that know nothing about sound acoustics for a church. I mean zero about it. Anything we can do to help liven that sanctuary will produce a livelier congregation and will be an encouragement for them to join in the participation in singing and in every other way in your church. Well, I guess you can tell I'm for congregational singing, but that is our heartbeat. And I think it's the strength of our people Anytime we perform for them and give it all to them like a stage show and lose them, we've lost it. Let's move on quickly to evangelistic missionary outreach through music. We try to tell all of our people and our music leadership that they are responsible under God to those people that are enrolled in their choirs who are not Christian. And we encourage them to get to know the family background, to visit in the home, just as a Sunday school teacher would, and to try to see that every person in the role that's not a Christian or every family related to it receives the witness of Christ through them. We try to seek and attract the unenlisted and the lost to our churches through our music ministry. And there's not a Sunday that passes that this is not accomplished. Thank the Lord. Through our youth choirs and through our sanctuary choir and our other ministers, people are attracted to our church, young people, adults, all of them. And we win them to our instrumental program through our orchestra here. People of the city find we have an orchestra, so they send the violinists. They want to play. They've learned. Maybe they're not Christian. Maybe they're members of other denominations. But they make the mistake of coming. And we use their talent for them, and we win them to the Lord. And that's all built in the basic motivation of what we try to do in all these areas. Present our sacred music, concerts outside the walls of the church. We take it out to shopping centers, to transportation centers like Love Field. At Christmas time, we did it once at Easter, keeping up with an Easter revival. We kind of shocked the people. They're used to hearing it at Christmas, but not at Easter. But I called the North Park Shopping Center here and talked to the people and said, look, we sing at Christmas time. That's a holy season of the year, religious season of the year. Why not do it at Easter? Would it be all right? Oh, yeah, they were all for it. And people, as they walked by buying their Easter bunnies and their hats, heard the message that Christ lives. And this is the real meaning of this season of the year. So we have an opportunity here for a missionary and evangelistic outreach. We've already talked about the choir tour as we, you've seen it on the screen as we showed it earlier. But we take our young people, and not only our high school choir now, but our junior high choir is doing the same thing. For 11 or 12 years we've been doing this now. And we build into that thing an evangelistic thrust. Not only do we expect results when we get out there of the people we witness to, but we expect and get results in the lives of young people to go. And I have to admittedly say this is my main reason, my main first love. I'm selfish in wanting our young people to benefit by what we're doing. If I had to point to one thing that I could say contributed most to the growth and the continued growth of our youth choir program in our church, and to their present emphasis on evangelism in their own lives, it would be that choir tour. We get more mileage out of that. One thing we do all year long, use it all year to keep up interest. We try to plan it to go to a mission area, wherever it is. This year we're going to Canada. We try to train them in soul winning before they go. I've told you about the how we try to program it, what songs we sing of this nature, but we also, this year, for instance, we have the Billy Graham Crusade coming, so we're going to use the counseling session training periods. There'll be 5 of them. And the young people who go on tour will be required to attend those counseling sessions. That'll be part of that soul-winning emphasis. We'll have spiritual retreats, trying to get our young people ready for what they're going to do. When we get to Vancouver, we're going to British Columbia, spend a week at the University of British Columbia there in Vancouver. We have a built-in opportunity to witness there with all those people in that university. And last time we were up there, the kids were down at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning in the lounges, talking to them in little corners all over that place. All over that place. We'll take them out to Beach Witness, a group of them. We'll train them in this, to one area of the city. We'll take another group into shopping centers. We'll take others to vacation Bible schools. And in this way, we will be trying to use the personal evangelism approach. And then we'll give about 3 major concerts in different areas all over the city. Queen Elizabeth Theater, the largest concert hall there, and 2 other areas. Our Baptist churches have invited us to come. It's the annual, it's a centennial, I should say, of British Columbia this year. So we're going to cash in on their emphasis in advertising and the programs that they are presenting. There'll be opportunity for television, radio coverage. And helping to emphasize the work of our Baptist churches in there. Pastors are joining hands with us. We'll work with them in their Bible schools and their individual churches. But the emphasis has been on evangelism in this thing. It all points toward that. Now, let me show you what's happened. You take some of these kids a long time ago. We tried to get them to go next door and knock on the door and witness to somebody. I talked to one of their friends at school. They were so reluctant to do that, so reluctant to do it. I remember one boy in particular that we took to California. This is just one of many we could cite. And one of them was in my class here last period, by the way. He's studying to be a preacher. He's leading the music and being youth director and associate pastor of the church, and said he prays every Sunday that the preacher gets sick so he'll have opportunity to preach. But this one boy went with us. He had never witnessed anybody. He's, kind of the shy football player type. Didn't sing too well, but I took him anyway. And we were going to California. Went out to Campus Crusade that particular year, and they trained us some, and particularly in beach witnessing. And we presented a concert at Huntington Beach. I found out later that Campus Crusade bunch never went to Huntington Beach. They always went to Balboa. And I found out why. Because they didn't tell us. But evidently that's where the hardest hippies hang out there. And it's kind of scared me when I found out about it. But we went there, prayed about it. Kids were in their bathing suits. First time I'd ever witnessed them in a bathing suit before. So I told the boys, you be sure you witness to boys, and girls, you be sure you witness to girls. Because we had to keep our mind on the right thing, when we're sitting down talking to folks like that. So they were trained to go into a group and to pull them aside and witness one-to-one. We did it, as you're probably familiar with this collegiate survey type thing. It's a sheet you go. It's a very simple thing to do. And you start out as if you're taking a survey. And you get halfway through, and then it starts turning that thing to their personal experience with Christ. And it's a beautiful way of leading into an opportunity to witness it. Well, they were scared to death. Sponsors, all of us were. We didn't know what was going to happen. So we had prayer, took our clipboards in hand, and we lined up along the seawall there at Huntington Beach. We had one boy as our captain, had a whistle on, and he sounded the charge and blew the whistle. And I've got some movies. I wish I could show you this. But they flanked that beach between two lifeguard stations. And I've got pictures of people sitting there like this, they glance around and they take a double take as they see this mob flanking. So it reversed the psychology, and they were the ones afraid instead of us this time. But those people winning those folks right and left, I was so amazed to know how responsive people are to the gospel when you're just honest with them to share with them that. Just amazed. Well, this boy came up to me out there shortly after we started the first wave. Then we blow a whistle, and take the next section of the beach and move on down. But he came to us and said, Mr. Taylor, I said, what is it? He's walking about 4 feet off the ground. He says, that boy over there just accepted the Lord. I led him to the Lord. Well, he was about to come unglued in the exuberance of that first experience that he had had in witnessing to someone and seeing them accept Christ as Savior. Well, let me tell you, when he came back to Dallas, it's a lot easier to get him to go then than to talk to somebody. He's already been exposed. And that's what we've done. Not only that, when these kids come back, they go into the homes with that mother and that daddy, and they share all these things that have happened. And there's an overflow of this into the home and into the entire church.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any follow-up with that type of witness?
Do I have any follow-up? You mean with the people there? Yes. What we did, for instance, as an example, in Huntington Beach, we worked through one of our churches out there, and we took the names of the people, we got their names on it, and we turned it into our local Southern Baptist churches there for them to follow through on. And then, of course, some of our kids write anyway to them, after we leave. That's a good question. Yes, sir.
How about the finances?
The finances, all right. We started out about 12 years ago paying for every penny of it. We proved the program to our church before we asked them for money for it. And at this point, the church, I guess I could safely say, pays a little less than half of the expenses. It's budgeted. The other half is delegated among those going. Each pays his proportionate share. They earn their own money to pay their own way. We have very few joint projects to raise money, feeling that this approaches the cake sales and things the Methodists, or others used to do, as recording. Others used to do to raise money. We believe we ought to raise it through a unified budget. I believe in that. So we'll help the kids get jobs. We sing for these conventions all over. Another evangelistic outreach I'm getting to. We've got about 6 or 8. We sing for the Texas Bar. We sing for the Texas Bar Convention. We're singing for Yes. Yeah, get that in quick. And Texas Oil Jobbers Association, we even sang for a Kirby, was it Kirby? Phil Jones over here led the choir for that. Was it the Kirby vacuum cleaner convention? But every opportunity we get, we spread out and do this. And we take this money and we take this, no, they just give us a check. We take this money and we put it in a general fund, which brings the cost down for every child going, young person going. And our record sales the same way. That goes into a general fund. Now, for instance, this book you see, the syllabus that you have, the church had received a price professionally for some people to put this thing to syllabus together, about $2,000. So the chapel choir decided to do it, and they gave us $1,500. But we took the money. We came on a Saturday, and I'm telling you, this was a job. From about 9 o'clock Saturday morning to about 6 o'clock Saturday night, putting these things together. Sorting the pages, you know, and then putting them in here, making them fit these holes. But we got the $1,500. I kept a record of the boys and girls as they came, and the time they checked in, the time they left. They didn't know this, the time. And I'm taking that $1,500, and I'm going to give everybody their proportionate share of it, depending on how many hours they work, and apply that to their tour expense this summer. Now, they don't know that, and the ones that didn't come didn't know I was going to do it that way either. But I think next time they'll be more apt to come. So this is how we handle that. Was there another, did that answer your question about the money? All right, any other question quickly about this? All right, let's move on. By the way, we are doing this with our junior high group. They're returning to Mexico this summer, and I was amazed. I was a little apprehensive, really, about junior high kids, 12-year-olds, 13, witnessing and singing for a crusade and hammering and building churches and working in Bible schools. But I'm telling you, we've got about 600 enrolled in these two choirs, and these junior high kids are doing a magnificent job. I am just thrilled at what they're able to do. And you talk about being bold in their witness. These kids are like a storm when they move in. I'm just thrilled with it. Yes, ma'am.
You travel by charter bus, by your own bus?
It depends on where we're going. Oh, we always travel by charter bus, if we go by bus. Yes, ma'am. All right, any other question? Yes, sir. All right.
How do you rate your priorities for engagement?
Priorities for engagements?
If somebody wanted to engage your choir, to make your choir come, how do you designate where you will go and what?
You mean on tour now?
No, to conventions like that.
All right. You're asking how do we give priorities to which conventions we take and which ones we do not?
Yes.
Well, I think it's just mainly boils down to the practicality of it. How, if our calendar's not crowded, if it's a time when the kids can go, if it's nearby, if it's worth it financially for us, if we have to travel somewhere, all these things enter into it. And it's first come, if we have two on the same date, of course, it's the one that asks first. We have been asked, I'm real thrilled about this, we've been asked to be the chorus, to be the choir for the Miss Teenage America pageant, which will be on national television in December. They have come to ask us to do this. We've appeared at Sell America program with Paul Harvey, with our orchestra out there, Paul Harvey and Art Buchwald, just recently at SMU. And so many opportunities are opening for us in this way. And we're just excited about the outreach that we have through music. Yes, sir.
To be a member of your choirs or orchestra, you do not require to be a member of the church.
No, that's correct. To be a member of any of our choirs, up to the adult choir, you do not have to be a member of our church.
Or necessarily be a Christian.
Or necessarily be a Christian. I'm glad you brought that up. We utilize all of our choirs for an evangelistic purpose. We try to get non-Christian people in here. We encourage our young people to bring their friends from school, and they do, and we do win them. Now, I do have this. We explain to our young people in the chapel choir, for instance, that they can be a member of the chapel choir, high school choir. They can participate in everything we do, even in the services. But they cannot go on tour unless they're a member of our church, because our church shares in the expense of those young people who go, number one. Number two, those young people who go as definite representatives of the First Baptist Church Dallas, wherever they are. And they can't be a representative of something they're not a member of. So we do draw the line there. Now, on our sanctuary choir, you cannot be a member of the sanctuary choir, an official member of the sanctuary choir, unless you're a member of our First Baptist Church. That's in our Constitution. You have a copy of it in your syllabus. But we do encourage them to come. I encourage them to come sing. If I know somebody that's not a Christian, he's interested in music, has a good voice and sings, man, I'd like to have him in here. Give us a chance. Let's surround him and see what we can do. So we try to not overlook that and not put our robes of righteousness around us and miss the whole point of what we're trying to accomplish. Still, we don't want to lose our testimony in having people sing before the people who would get outside and embarrass the church either. So you have to use your mind when you. How's that going to sound on that recording? All right. Any other questions at this point? We try to extend our ministry in this evangelistic approach in these choirs, as we've mentioned. We carol every Christmas. I've mentioned that in all the shopping centers. Then we also try to use our recordings to perpetuate this ministry. All the recordings you see out in the hall here, they're available. If you'd like to purchase 15 or 20 of each of them, I think we make them available. But we use these recordings. For instance, our missionaries come home and we load them up with recordings. They take them back to the mission field and distribute them from the radio stations. And they're played all over the world. We do it here in the city of Dallas. We do it in the whole nation. We send records around to radio stations so that they can use this and perpetuate our ministry through music. And something else happens. These young people that have been in choir, I get letters from them. They've been in choirs from our choirs back beginning of 11, 12 years ago. They'll write occasionally and let me know and say how much an experience had meant to them in chapel choir, had helped them through a situation that they've encountered later in life. And I never forget that they're going to have that record that they sang. And they'll sit down and play that occasionally in that home. And it'll recall those experiences they had back at that choir tour when God was real to them. And when they maybe had won their first person to the Lord. And you can't tell them that that's not going to cause them in their hearts. Like going back to the place where you converted, It just keeps recalling those things in their mind to strengthen their faith. So it's a perpetuating thing, the recordings. I would like to share briefly with you one thing I'm excited about, and just to parenthetically say this here. We have a national board that's just been set up on Christian composers. Bev Shea heads it up, and I have the opportunity of serving on it, where we're trying to look for another area of evangelistic outreach through music, through the radio. The trend now on our radio programs is a lean toward the sacred, toward religious type music. Amazing Grace, Happy Day, things of this nature. But so much junk has been thrown in there. So much poor theology. Mixed up with all the Oriental religions and everything else. As long as it mentions religion, they think it'll go. So what we're going to do is to furnish a sheet. We're going to call it the sheet. We'll send it out to every Christian young person we can find, free. And it will encourage those Christian young people to write a letter or to call their local DJs and request the following songs. We'll have some in country western, we'll have some in folk, we'll have some in easy listening, we'll have some in rock. But we will be selective in trying to select those tunes that have some meat in them. Now, where are we going to get those tunes? We have composers from all over the world that are sending them in to us. And we're screening them. And we're trying to record them in such a way that they will have a commercial sound that will get them on the air. Now, they're going to listen to this junk anyway. Why not put something in there to ease out the bad theology they're listening to and take its place at least hearing good theology? The music may not be what we'd want, but at least they're replacing that bad theology with something worth listening to in that vein. Now, let me show you what can happen. I was amazed at this. This particular man that taught, Billy Hanks, is heading this up. He talked to me about this, said that he had gone to a particular radio station, talked with a DJ for hours on end, trying to get him to play a certain record, and he wouldn't do it. He and his wife and his secretary sat down and wrote 13 letters, signed them anonymously, requesting the number, and the guy played it all day long. That's the difference. They tell me, I talked to a DJ yesterday here in Dallas, Cliff. He said that one letter represents the opinion of 5,000 people to them. One letter. Why, I got to thinking. We have over 600 young people in my youth choirs here alone. I could divide them up and give them a radio station apiece to write into, and we could actually control the listening audience in Dallas. You could. So what we're hoping to do throughout the whole United States is to send out this sheet to these young people and encourage them to do this, to write in. And we can control what goes on those airwaves. That's exciting to me. And literally millions of people will be listening to that. Literally millions. This is... If you'll just send them to me, I'll see if they get on the list and sent the sheet. I sure will. Now, we've got to move on. Christian education. We've talked about worship, evangelistic outreach through music. Now, Christian education through music. That's something we ought to do with music in a church. We do this with our youth choirs. We do this with our young people as well as our adults. Do you know that the hymnal next to the Bible contains the greatest source of Christian doctrine available in any other book? You want a good source of Christian poetry? Get your hymnal and read it. If the Bible, heaven forbid, but if the Bible were lost from us tomorrow, there'd be enough of the Christian doctrine preserved through our hymnal that can carry us through. You have, right now, if you'll recall, even as a child, you have memorized great Christian truths just by singing them that you didn't realize you were even memorizing. You think back. Committed things to memory. We find our young people, and I find myself doing this, and our adults on Sunday. When we stand to read the Scripture, sometimes I find myself quoting the Scripture. And yet I've not made a conscious effort to learn it, memorize it. We have sung it in an anthem. And unconsciously we've committed that to memory. And every song we sing will have good doctrine in it, good Christian truths in it. And as we sing that, those young people not only are singing it as an outreach to people, but there's an inward contribution that it makes also. It comes in, and they will have that with them for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives. Now, we take this to little bit of children, and we take music, which is a tremendous memory aid, and we wed it to Christian words and doctrine. And they memorize that, and it becomes a part of them as they grow and grow and grow. They do this in the secular field. Why not do it here? You hear a tune, a jingle on the radio or television, and you just hear the first couple of bars, and you know what that tune is, and you know what product it's for, too. Why not do that in church with what we're doing? Christian education through music. We have music education. 4 things: worship, evangelism, outreach, Christian education, now music education. It gets back to the stewardship of the talents. God has given each of us a talent. He's given each of us 2, 3, 5 talents, whatever. He has demanded of us that we hone that talent to a fine edge, to use it for Him, to do our finest, and to offer to Him the first fruits of our labor, to give Him our very best. We may not be a Caruso or a Billy Graham, but what God has endowed us with is what He holds us responsible for. It's like Moody said, talking about this grammar situation, when the lady was reaming him out, about using bad grammar. He said, "Well, lady, all I can say is this." He said, "I'm doing the best I can with what I have for God." So what are you doing with your life? And that's what God requires of us. And I'm so thrilled that in our church we have this Crystal Bible Institute now and the Conservatory of Music. I can say to our people, we're providing for you now on Tuesday nights here in our church through this Conservatory of Music, voice class, 2 voice classes, a class in basic music theory and sight singing, which will help you be a better steward of what you have. I had a man come to me today, and I didn't realize this when we started, but over half of the people enrolled in our Crystal Bible Institute are not even members of our church. I didn't think this would be the case. But a man came to me who pastors a little church out in Mesquite, and he came and said, "I just want to tell you what this is meaning to our church." He said, "We have a layman who's a minister of music at our church. He knows nothing about music. He is enrolled in your institute now, and he's learning how to sing, and he's learning about music, and it's making a tremendous impact on our church. He has an assistant, a young man out there who wants to follow in his footsteps. He's coming. He's enrolled in the Bible Institute. Our pianist plays the piano fine, but she needs some more help in learning in music. She is in your Crystal Bible Institute. I am enrolled," he said, "in the Bible study of the Crystal Bible Institute, helping prepare me." He said, "I entered the ministry late in life, and I've had not an opportunity to prepare as I should. And this is a godsend to us. We've been praying for it." And he says, "I have 4 of my deacons coming also." So the outreach that we're able to accomplish this is a thrill to me. So music education. Now, below that on page 7, and we've got to move fast if you'll stay with me, is merely an evaluation of what the First Baptist Church in Dallas has done to meet these basic objectives I've outlined, and what we could do to improve this in our own church. Some goals have been set for us in here, for whatever value they might be to you. On page M9, you'll see a percentage of the enrollment in Sunday school in each of the areas that we have now enrolled in our choirs. we have about 1,665 enrolled in our music ministry now. And we have as our goal it's your talent, don't lose it, use it this year. And our underlying goal for that is beat the Mormons. We're trying our best to outgrow them. And we're on our way. We have about 260 enrolled now in our sanctuary choir. 260. Oh, theirs? I think over 300 and about 350.
How many can you take care of in the sanctuary?
Well, we've just how many can I take care of in the sanctuary? We have just enlarged our choir loft area to the point now where the entire balcony will become a choir loft as I need it. By using the balcony seats on either side, we can seat over 240 right in that area there, by using the extension of the balcony going on through. You'll find in your book here, page M11, if you'll turn to that now, the schedule of our music ministry. If you'd like to add there one other rehearsal that was left off. On Sundays, from 6:10 until 7 o'clock, we have sanctuary choir rehearsal right here in this room. I came in not too long ago and saw a group of our people sitting around visiting. They did this repeatedly on Sunday. They weren't going to train you. And I said, we're going to stop this. As long as you're here, we're going to work. So we started a rehearsal. I announced it on Thursday night to our people, regular rehearsal. Said, come Sunday night at 6:10. If you're not involved in training union, if you're involved in training union, please go. So last Sunday we had about 130 people in here singing, 6:10. We've been doing this for a long time. It's an added rehearsal. It gives us opportunity for training in Christian service, and that's what training union's for. Beg pardon? What choir is this? It's the sanctuary choir, the adult choir. You see the rest of our rehearsal schedule listed there. We try to consolidate, as you probably have in your church, everything we can to save the trips of the people to the church. They have to come, they're so busy. So Wednesday night, we have about 18 choirs meeting at the same hour. And on Sundays, we have 3 units meeting, our chapel, clarion, high school, junior high, and our orchestra meeting at this very same time on Sunday afternoon. So we try to consolidate these things for the convenience of our people. You'll find on pages M12 through M17 all of our record system that we've designed here for use in our music ministry. You can refer to that and use any of that you'd like. At page M18 and the ensuing pages, you'll find job descriptions of all of our music staff. You'll find mine on page 19 and 20, our assistant minister of music, Mr. Perry Taylor, our organist music assistant, Mr. Tommy Brinkley, our music administrative assistant, Mr. Rowena Rainey, on page M22, and Jane May, our other music assistant. And then you'll find on page M23, we have a part-time lady who comes and helps us with the children's choir area, Mr. Taylor, half a day for a week. And then we have our music assistant instrumental, which is Mr. Carl Bowling, who's a layman, who directs my orchestra for me. Then on page M24, we have an intern program. We take a young man from Southwestern Seminary studying music. We bring him over, and he's on a scholarship program here at the church. He lives with us, directs our choirs, and sings in our services, and breathes with us here at the church, and tries to absorb as much as he can, so that when he finishes the seminary, we hope he'll leave here with a better prepared background to go out and build a music ministry. Phil Jones from Samford University is that young man this year. Reagan Vandergriff, who's here this week with us also, was our first one. And he's at Roswell Street Baptist Church in Marietta, Georgia, doing a tremendous job. And we feel like part of us is over there with him in that. And we rejoice in it. So I'm real pleased with the privilege we have to take these young men and to share with them and perpetuate what we hope will be effective. Then our constitution of our sanctuary choir, you'll find I've duplicated for you from pages M25 to M30. This contains in there everything that has to do with membership, attendance, the organization, when we meet, what we do when we do meet. And I think it'll be interesting to you to read. Then the pages 32 to the end gives you the same information concerning our chapel choir. Do you have any question that I might answer in these last few remaining seconds? This is our Sanctuary Choir yearbook, which we give every year to our Sanctuary Choir members. It contains the pictures of the Sanctuary Choir, shows our officers, so they can look at this and become acquainted with the membership of the choir, and has the Constitution in it for their reference also. Do you have any other questions? I'm sure there are things that I have failed to cover. Yes, sir.
Do you correlate your music with a pastor's sermon?
Let me say a brief word about that. Thank you for bringing it up. Do I correlate my music with a pastor's sermon? On Monday, I get Dr. Criswell's sermon topic, his scriptures, and he selects the invitation hymn. And I sit in my office and go over that in my mind. I read the scriptures, and I thumb through that hymnal and ask God to lead me in which hymns I select and how it fits into the message as best I can. We try to relate. Now, I'm going to have a little difficulty Sunday.
What did you do 2 weeks ago?
That was difficult also. But as we can, we try to desperately do that. Now, he chooses the invitation hymn. And let me say this about the invitation. We tell our choir and our people the most important song we sing, and really the most important moment in that whole service, is when we come to that invitation period. And our choir is sensitive to this. Everything we do boils down to that time. That's when the surgeon takes that scalpel and begins to cut. Right at that time. That's so important. So we come up singing that first invitation hymn. And then from there, I don't know myself what I'm going to do, but I try, as I sense the leadership of the Holy Spirit in that invitation, to try to mold the atmosphere so that the Holy Spirit can use the singing and the words and the message